There are messages that are not delivered in public, nor recorded in documents. They are written with the heart and directed to a few. The letter you are about to learn about was not made for the entire world. It was made for souls that carry invisible scars, who live feeling a pain that no one understands. This message did not come from the church. It came from the Spirit. It was not written to be read, but to be felt. Its content is deep, personal, and, in a way, prophetic. It is not about dogmas or religion. It is about mission, a mission that only the chosen recognize. Pope Francis, in his final days, did not speak to the altars. He wrote to the forgotten, to the silent, to those who walk with heavy hearts and living faith, even without understanding why there is so much struggle. To those he called the chosen. Chosen ones are not the perfect, nor the most religious. They are those who have gone through rejection, loneliness, and deep transformations. Ordinary people with extraordinary hearts. Individuals who do not fit into this world because they were made for something beyond. What you are about to hear may remind you of something you have always felt, but have never been able to put into words. It may awaken memories, confirm intuitions, reignite what was dormant within you, because in the end, this is not a letter from the Pope. It is a reminder from heaven. A calling whispered amidst the noise of the world. And if you have made it this far, you may already be feeling this. Now, follow this channel, because this message is just the beginning. There is still much to be revealed. And if your spirit recognizes this truth, it is because the time has come to remember who you are. Not everything that is true needs to be said aloud. Some revelations are born in silence, grow in the soul, and ask for only a blank page to take shape. That is how this message began. A man, already with a tired body and a full heart, understood that he needed to write. Not for everyone, but for those who have always felt without knowing what it was. For years, he carried visions, sensations, intuitions that did not fit into the traditional format of religion. It was as if heaven spoke in another frequency, one that did not depend on rituals, but on inner listening. He understood that there were people in the world being prepared in silence. People with difficult stories, deep pains, and a sensitivity that no one understood. These souls did not seek the stage. They did not ask for explanations. But they were being activated, one by one. The words he began to put on paper did not have a tone of authority. They had a tone of surrender. They were not words to teach, but to confirm what many already knew without ever having heard it. This letter was born out of urgency. Not of time, but of spirit. It was as if something was saying, "Write before the right voices fall silent." And he wrote. He spoke of sleepless nights, where he would wake up with a racing heart, as if he were feeling the pain of another person. Of tears that flowed without apparent reason. Of vivid dreams that did not seem like dreams, but messages. He shared that many times he wanted to share these experiences, but he felt they would be misunderstood, so he kept them to himself, until he could no longer. What was inside him needed to be passed on, even if in secret. These revelations do not speak of political futures, nor of visible events. They speak of invisible movements happening in the hearts of the chosen, a silent preparation for something that demands truth, faith, and surrender. He describes the chosen in a touching way. Forgotten people, rejected, strange in the eyes of the world. People who feel more than they can bear, who think beyond what they can explain, who seek God in silence, without needing a stage label or approval. What he saw was not an army of appearances. It was a sensitive and awake generation, a crowd of wounded hearts that have been shaped by pain, but who are now beginning to understand why. He asks that these souls do not fall silent, that they do not let themselves be convinced that they are fragile, that they understand that every rejection, every silence, and every internal struggle was part of the activation process. There is not a single model of the chosen. There are those who heal in silence, those who awaken with their gaze, those who transform an environment simply by being present, and all are necessary. This confession does not seek attention, it seeks truth. It was written because the time for doubt has passed. Now is the time to remember, the time to accept who you are. If you feel this message penetrating you, do not ignore it. You are not reading this by chance. Someone wrote quickly because they knew that heaven wants to speak to you. This is a letter delivered to the heart, and only those with a sensitive spirit will understand it completely. Not every chosen one has the appearance of a saint. Not every calling wears a vestment. Many times the chosen ones are among the invisible. Those who have no position, those who have no title, those who do not attract attention where the world seeks brightness. But there is something in them that cannot be ignored. Presence. Francisco describes these people with an almost supernatural sensitivity, not in a mystical sense, but because they perceive what no one else sees. They feel the changes in the environment. They react to pains that are not even theirs. They carry memories they do not know the origin of, as if they have lived more than this life. The chosen ones do not see themselves as special. In fact, most do not even know they are, because they have always lived trying to understand why they are different, why they feel too much, why they cannot fit into almost any place. They carry in their bodies the lightness of love, but in their hearts, the weight of the world. They are not altar saints. They are healers of the soul. They do not heal with words, but with presence. Sometimes, just being next to a chosen one is enough to bring peace. They are people whom many call strange, too sensitive, disconnected. But it is precisely these characteristics that make them a bridge between what is earthly and what is eternal, because they were made to be in the middle, not of the world, but of the crossing between what is and what should be. They do not lead crowds with speeches. They lead by the way they live, how they look, how they touch. Sometimes the presence of a chosen one is unsettling, because where they are, the truth appears. The energy changes. The shadow reveals itself. They are those who are easily moved, not out of fragility, but out of connection. They feel God in the wind, in music, in someone's eyes. And this often makes them seem out of place. But it is not displacement. It is difference of origin. They were not made to fit in. They were made to remember who they are, and to help others remember as well. The signs are silent, but clear. One of them is the constant feeling of not belonging, as if nothing is entirely home, as if the heart lives in search of something that is not in this world. Another sign is the inexplicable memory, not of facts, but of sensations, as if they already knew what they never learned, as if they came with something etched in their souls, waiting only for the right moment to be activated. Francisco writes that the chosen ones are like buried seeds. They seem forgotten, but they are just being prepared. And when they bloom, they change the environment around them without making a fuss. These souls do not appear with spotlight brilliance, but with true light. They carry compassion in their gaze, listening in their gestures, and firmness in their silence. They are out there, disguised as ordinary people, and when they finally understand who they are, they do not need to prove anything more. They simply live, and by living, they transform. There is a moment that does not have a set time to arrive, but when it comes, nothing else remains as before. It is when the soul, tired of pretending, decides to awaken. This moment is not loud, it is silent but profoundly transformative. Francisco called this instant the turning of the spirit. In his letter he says that the awakening does not come with spectacle. It arrives disguised, sometimes as a deep fatigue, other times as an unexplained cry. It can come in a silence that is unsettling, or in a peace that is frightening. But it always carries the feeling that something inside us has risen and will not lie down again. The Pope wrote that this awakening happens when the soul can no longer live a life that does not represent who it is. It is when the mask falls, the armor weighs heavy, and the heart cries out for truth, even if that truth hurts. He said that this process does not depend on religion, that it does not require rituals, nor does it demand that you fit into dogmas, because it is a calling that comes from within, not from outside, a calling that does not ask what your belief is, but whether you are ready to live with authenticity. Francisco had a compassionate outlook towards those who were awakening. He knew that this moment is solitary, that it cannot be forced or rushed, but that when it happens, it is impossible to ignore. He said that those who wake spiritually feel as if they are coming home for the first time. At this point in the letter, he speaks with a rare delicacy, with the calm of someone who does not judge those who are still asleep, but with the firmness of someone who already knows what comes after opening the eyes. He asks the awakened to have patience with others, but courage with themselves. The awakening also brings ruptures, because everything that is false begins to dissolve. Relationships, places, habits, nothing that is not real can remain. It is painful to see things crumble, but it is necessary. Francisco said, "What dissolves in the awakening was never part of your mission." The Pope did not say what each person should do. He never pointed to ready-made paths, but he reinforced the importance of listening, of stopping, of allowing oneself to feel, because the awakened heart hears God in places that others cannot even imagine. In the sound of the wind, in the falling tear, in the silence of dawn. He said that this is the moment when the chosen begin to stop surviving and start to live, not based on what is expected of them, but on what they know they came to fulfill. And it is at this point that the mission begins to pulse. The awakening is not the end of pain, but it is the end of lies. It is when the soul decides to live with purpose, even if that costs distances, new beginnings, or the courage to walk alone for a time. Francisco believed that this process was a gift difficult to unwrap, but that, once accepted, changes life. And he knew that those who carried this transformation within them were not lost. They were just waking up. There comes a point when the awakening stops being just an inner feeling and begins to become an external choice. And this choice, although silent, changes everything, deciding to be who you are. This is the crossing. Pope Francis used this word with great care, crossing. For him, it was not just a displacement. It was a spiritual process, a path that is not traveled with the feet, but with the soul. He said that after the awakening, there is an inevitable moment, the moment of taking a stand. It is when the chosen one stops pretending, stops pleasing, stops following expectations placed by others, and begins to live what they came to fulfill. But the crossing is not comfortable. It requires decisions, and every true decision involves loss. It is at this point that friends distance themselves, environments become heavy, and loneliness appears with strength. Because when you commit to your truth, everything that is not aligned with it begins to crumble, and that is frightening. Francisco said that the crossing begins exactly there. When you understand that you can no longer return to what you were, but you still do not know exactly what you will be. It is the space between the old life and the revealed mission. This bridge, as he wrote, does not appear before the decision. It is built as you walk, step by step, day after day, even with fear, even not knowing what comes after the next bend. The chosen one feels at this stage that they are losing everything. But what is being lost is merely what no longer sustained the truth. The soul begins to seek lighter spaces, deeper people, more real conversations. The Pope called this natural purification, a type of cleaning that life does when the soul decides to live with courage. You do not need to forcibly remove anything. What is not vibrating at your new frequency will leave on its own. That is why many at this stage feel alone, because they have not yet found those who have also crossed. But this loneliness is not a punishment. It is a new beginning. It is the interval between the old and the new. Francisco asked that, at this stage, the awakened do not rush, that they trust the rhythm of the soul, that they do not try to build a new identity with the rubble of the old, that they allow the new to come gradually, with truth, with structure. He reminded us, to be who you are is not to become something new, but to return to your original essence. That essence that the world tried to erase, but that resisted. That which, even when wounded, remained alive within you. The crossing also requires surrender, because there will be moments when everything seems unstable, where faith will be your only ground. And it is at this point that heaven draws even closer. Francisco wrote that the crossing was a sacred territory, because it is in it that purpose begins to manifest. It is there that the chosen realize that what they carry has value, and that their pain had direction. He saw this phase as the most challenging but also the most transformative, because it is in the crossing that the chosen stop surviving hidden and start to live with meaning. There are no formulas for crossing. Each soul has its own path, but there is one common point, the decision not to go back. Once you touch your truth, pretending hurts more than facing it. Many will not understand your choices. Some will call you ungrateful, rebellious, distant. But what they do not know is that you are simply following what has always been written within you. And now finally, you are listening. The crossing does not end with a specific destination. It opens the door to a way of living, whole, sincere, with presence. And this way of living in itself is already a mission. Francisco believed that God does not want you to fit in. He wants you to overflow. And for that reason, the crossing is necessary. Because it removes the molds, dismantles the disguises, and delivers to you what the world could never give. Spiritual freedom. Not everyone who does a lot appears, and not everyone who appears really serves. Francisco always knew this. He never sought the spotlight, even when the whole world was looking at him. His greatest achievements were not just the words spoken in squares, nor the meetings with world leaders. They were the small gestures, the listening, the presence, the silent peace that he carried. He was a pope who chose simplicity when everyone expected pomp, who preferred to visit prisons rather than parade on red carpets, who spoke more about mercy than about power. He knew that true mission is not in being prominent, it is in the impact. For Francisco, mission was never greatness in human eyes. It was coherence, it was love, it was presence. He said that the world does not need heroes, it needs awakened people. He saw the world crumbling, not just in wars or political conflicts, but in values, in compassion, in human connection. And he said calmly and firmly, the mission of the chosen is to reignite what is fading. This light is not made of noise. It is subtle, but transformative. The chosen do not change everything at once. They change what they touch. A gaze, a hug, a true listening. Francisco believed that this was the most sacred mission, to touch someone's world, even if that someone never knows your name. He wrote lovingly about those who heal with their presence, about those who welcome without judging, about those who remain true to their truth, even when the world tries to push them away from it. The mission of the chosen is not to convert, it is to awaken. It is not to impose, it is to inspire. It is not to dominate, it is to serve. He taught that each awakened soul has a unique way of radiating light. Some speak, others write, others simply live so sincerely that near them we remember who we are. And it does not matter if that person is known or not. The Pope said, "The mission does not need a stage, it needs surrender." He himself never boasted about what he did. When asked about his acts, he responded simply, "I just tried to do what was right." That is how he saw the mission, not as an achievement, but as a response. This same humility is what he saw in the chosen, people who have no idea of the difference they make, who often think they are not doing enough, when in fact they are already transforming everything around them. Francisco said that the world is tired of loud voices and empty speeches. What he cried out for was true presences, for souls that light up environments without needing to say anything. The chosen are those souls, those who carry light, even when they are tired, those who see beyond, even when the world insists on blinding them, those who choose to love, even when it would be easier to close their hearts. This mission is not easy. It requires renunciation. It requires silence. It requires patience. But Francisco always reminded us that heaven never sends without sustaining, and that everyone who has been called will also be cared for. The mission is not to carry the world on your shoulders. It is to do your part with truth. And in the sum of small truths, something much greater happens. Being light in dark times is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is about being a point of calm amid chaos. It is about looking into eyes and seeing the soul. And for this, no degree, recognition, or permission is needed. It is enough to be willing. Francisco wrote this with serene conviction. He knew that the true strength of the chosen lies precisely in the fact that they do not see themselves as special. And for that reason, God uses them powerfully. Even when that means walking against the crowd. He knew this because he lived that way. He refused golden thrones. He walked with the forgotten. He washed the feet of prisoners. He spoke simply where power was expected. And he never boasted, because he understood that true greatness is invisible to common eyes. Those who truly shine do not make noise. They illuminate in silence. They transform without imposing. They touch without announcing. They are like small candles in a dark world, discreet but absolutely necessary. Francisco said, "Either you shine, or you fade away trying to fit where you were never called to be." This phrase is not a criticism. It is a liberation, a reminder for you to stop fighting against yourself and start truly living with meaning. The decision to be who you are begins small. A gesture, a firm number A whispered yes with courage, a step in the opposite direction, even while trembling. And, over time, this decision changes everything around you. You do not need to explain your journey. Those who were called will feel. Those who are part of your path will recognize. What is no longer for you will dissolve, not because you forced it, but because you allowed yourself to be true. Francisco knew that he could not walk this road for you, but he left this last message as a beacon, as someone who saw heaven manifest in the midst of pain, in the midst of doubt, in the midst of real life. And he understood that God never distances himself from those who carry purpose. You are not alone. You never were. Even when everyone distanced themselves, even when nothing made sense, even when everything seemed lost, there was something holding your soul up. Now that something calls you to go beyond, to not return to what once was. If you have read this far, something within you has already awakened. And perhaps, for the first time in a long time, you are ready to say, no more running away. This is not a message of wait. It is a message of liberation. The Pope did not want to create fear. He wanted to remind you that your existence carries light, that your pain had purpose, and that your life can be the answer for others who are still sleeping. Now it is up to you. No one can decide for you, but if this letter touched your spirit, even without understanding everything, then it was made for you. If you felt truth in these words, comment below. This message was for me, or I am one of those who have awakened. Your comment may touch another soul. It may be the awakening of someone. It may be the confirmation that another heart needed to remember who they are. You have been set apart. You have been shaped. Now it is time to take a stand.